Before I begin my formal remarks, there's some people that I want to recognize. There are two people on the stage that I want to make sure that I let them understand how pleased I am that they're here. Appeals Court Judge Robert Brennan and the Regional Administrative Judge Lynn Rooney. Thank you both for being here. It means a great deal to me. Thank you. We're very fortunate in the city of Salem to have somebody in charge of what we call special projects. That person is Ellen Talkowski. And if any of you had been with us a couple of weeks ago and we did the walkthrough, and we walked through the auditorium and said, we've got some work to do in here, if we did it before and after, you can put Ellen Talkowski's name next to it. She got it done. I also want to recognize Mayor Kim Driscoll, somebody who I've worked with for many decades. Kim is actually in Springfield and Worcester today as she prepares to take over as our next Lieutenant Governor. We're very proud to have worked with her as well. One of the really bittersweet feelings that I've had since the election are the colleagues that I'm going to miss. My colleagues in the legislature who are here, my colleagues in city government, and particularly the colleague that I've worked so closely with, Senator Joan Lovely, who is an extraordinary legislator, a wonderful person, and the hardest working public servant that I've ever worked with. Joan, it's been an honor to work with you. Thank you. I also want to thank Dr. Steve Reich, who's our superintendent, and Glenn Burns, who's the principal here, and the director of facilities, Z, who does an amazing job. Thank you also to Sergeant Major Sumner, our wonderful junior ROTC students, and especially our Witch Pitch a cappella group to bring such honest and dignity to this ceremony this morning. I'm very grateful to them as well. Reverend Flowers, your words all resonated with me, and I will hold them close to my heart, and we will hear from one of my favorite, who I called last week at the Hanukkah Lighting, the coolest rabbi in the North Shore. So, Rabbi Lipska, thank you for being here today. We've had a wonderful transition over these last 6 weeks or so, first and foremost because of the person that John Blodgett is. He congratulated me at 1:30 in the morning on election day, election night it turned out to be, and the staff and just the graciousness that the entire Essex County DA's team has shown me will never be forgotten. We also put together an extraordinary transition team, and I want to recognize from John's office, Meg Carpenter and Maria Arroyo Long. Thank you both for what you brought to our transition team. We're also very fortunate to have a great perspective of a former assistant DA who now holds a top position with Mass Bankers and whose parents live right behind me, Brad Papalato. Brad, thank you for all you did for us as well. Thank you. Putting together a leadership team when John already had an extraordinary team on the field, and I know John's a baseball guy, and I've said this often, John put an extraordinary team on the field. And we have a couple of new players that are coming on to that team. Scott DeLay, coming on as Chief Legal Counsel, has been with me every step of the way in the campaign. He brings extraordinary integrity and good insight. And Scott, I'm so glad to have you as part of the team. And someone who has been with me since my days as a detective captain, who started as an intern, rose to be the chief of staff of my police department when I was the chief, and has now left her position as city solicitor to join us in 2 days, Sharon Lubis. And the last part of the leadership team, you may not have seen him yet, but he did the introductions for us, Glenn Johnson. Glenn brings a wealth of experience, not only as a reporter and as an author. Glenn had an extraordinary 4 years as the press person for John Kerry when John was Secretary of State. So Glenn, thank you for joining our team as well. Justice Lowy, Judge Chapman, I'm honored by your presence. Kevin Burke, extraordinary work that you have done. The people on this stage, this is the essence of public safety, and I'm honored to have them with me. It means a great deal to me. I also want to recognize from my law school, Mike Coyne is the dean, and every person, particularly our folks that are in the legal profession who put all the work in through law school, always had your favorite professor, somebody who you could count on, and that person for me is Constance Rudnick Grayson, Professor Emeritus, Mass School of Law, who still is a great friend today. Connie, thank you for all you've done for me. Before I introduce my family, there's one other person who has had probably the most extraordinary impact on my career, from not only from a friendship side, but from a professional side. When I took over as chief in 2009 of the Salem Police Department, I succeeded Bob St. Pierre. Bob was chief for 25 years. That's a record which was going to be unequaled. No one will ever match that as well. Brian, my little guy, he's my favorite guy. He probably wants to be up on the stage with me. Bob St. Pierre nurtured my career, and I followed in his footsteps pretty closely, being a patrol officer, going into detectives, being a detective sergeant, and then running the criminal bureau as a detective captain, and then it was a high honor in my life to succeed him as chief. Bob, you've done more for me, and I'm so thankful, more than you'll ever know, and I appreciate it. I'm very blessed to have an extraordinary family, and if anybody follows me on Facebook, which we're going to be changing some things around a little bit of history. I ran for a state rep 8 years ago, and right up until the first day, I would say to my kids, what's this Facebook thing? You guys wasting time on that. The day that I decided to run for office, I said, well, I better get a Facebook page. Now the conversation in the room generally is my kids saying, Dad, get off the Facebook, enough with the dogs and the grandkids. But I am very blessed with an extraordinary family. My son Dan and my daughter-in-law Kelly, who is, oh, you didn't leave, you're there. Thank you. Both Dan and Kelly, I'm very proud to say, are police officers and both do extraordinary work, and we love both of you. My daughter Megan is here with my son-in-law Dylan and her two boys, Declan and Owen. Very proud of my daughter Megan. Ever the scientist, she always puts things together for me. When we needed a website, and she saw what the price was going to be, she put it together for about $200 and did an amazing job. Always stepping up, does an extraordinary job. I'm very blessed to have Meg and Dill. They're extraordinary parents. Thank you guys both. Appreciate it. And the one I generally get in trouble with sometimes, my youngest, Shannon, who is a first-year teacher here in this building and coaches after school for folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I made the mistake, I think, 8 years ago in my speech when I was introducing my family. I said that Shannon was the light of my life, and my oldest two children have not let me forget it. She still continues to be the light of my life, and she will be getting married in July to our future son-in-law, Riley Christie, who's actually the athletic director here at Salem High as well. Thank you both. I appreciate it. Rounding out my other 4 grandchildren, in addition to Declan and Owen, is Abigail, who came up with my favorite Razzo guys, come up and did the Pledge of Allegiance. Brian is there. Ryan is here. Declan, I think and Julie. I think we covered everybody. My brother Michael is here. If you need a trivia question for tonight, my brother Michael and my sister-in-law Kim are from the only Hanukkah in the world. They drove down from New Hampshire this morning. I'm glad that they made it as well. Thank you for being here. My extended family and the heads of my family, my Aunt Judy and my Uncle Tom and the rest of the extended family, I'm so grateful that you're all here. Thank you. Just a couple other special remarks before I begin my prepared remarks. There is an empty seat here in the front as a nice commemoration and celebration, remembering my parents, my father Daniel, my mother Sheila, and my sister Sheila, who passed last year. And they may not be with us, but that chair, they're with us always in our hearts and forever. I'm very grateful about that as well. And last is my wife, Ann. This year we celebrated 40th wedding anniversary in July, which I'm sure sometimes for her it feels like a lifetime. With all of the things that we've been through, particularly on the professional side, I am not standing at this podium or anywhere near here but for the support that she's given me. I think of being away at the FBI Academy for 3 months and then starting law school about 5 days later. I think about all the studying that I did for promotional exams, but mostly I think about the last year, the last 11 months, when I said, I think we can do this, and we being the operative word, I think we can do this. Driving to the great city of Lawrence and Methuen and Haverhill, to Gloucester, to Lynn. She was with me every step of the way, and I never would be here without her, and I'm very grateful. Thank you. For me, two things stand out this morning: the place that we are in and the people who are present. This place, Salem High School, shows my commitment to the community and to young women and men who are the future. The people present, our esteemed judiciary, judges, clerks, court personnel, our dedicated law enforcement officers, community members, neighbors, and friends. This speaks to the role of the District Attorney's Office in the community. We are part of the community. It was 1 year ago this week that I announced my intention to run for District Attorney. I did so with the greatest respect for the two men who led this office for a combined 44 years, and did so with integrity and with reverence for the ideals of fairness and justice. To now stand in the lineage of Kevin Burke and John Blodgett is humbling. And every day of my administration, I will strive to uphold the high bar of public service that each set. Inaugural speeches, especially an elected official's first inaugural speech. It's an opportunity to lay out the goals and aspirations for what they hope is a productive and successful term. And for me, today is no different, as I have much that I want to accomplish. To continue John Blodgett's successful efforts with juvenile offenders and being such a strong voice for victims of crime. And to heed the words of Kevin Burke, who provided me with good advice and counsel on so many issues, and he was always right on target. None more so than when we talked about how better outcomes for offenders meant better outcomes for public safety and better outcomes for society. Those words stayed with me every day on the campaign trail as I talked with people touched by substance use disorder and mental health struggles. And it recalled my days with the Salem Police Department, where we incorporated mental health professionals working directly in our own public safety strategies. It means looking for better outcomes for our veterans who become court involved. And it also means knowing the difference between someone caught in the grip of addiction, who need our understanding and our treatment, and someone trafficking in fentanyl, the substance that has taken so many lives and destroyed so many families. That offender must face an appropriate penalty. My friend and colleague Tim Whalen, who is here, he and I successfully passed legislation to increase the penalty for those who are responsible for this terrible epidemic. Today, at this ceremony, I will use my voice to talk about my goals and aspirations for this office, but I'm going to do it through the words of the dedicated women and men who make up the Essex County District Attorney's Office. When I was elected, I asked each employee, some 170 employees, assistant district attorneys, victim witness advocates, juvenile justice staff, administration and support staff, to write a cover letter with the submission of a resume. I read every one of them twice. And what I learned about this incredible team was nothing short of breathtaking. These letters, these personal stories, spoke volumes about justice, about dedication, and why these professionals do what they do. Today we'll say more about the district attorney's team than any remarks that I could have put together. Here are their words, taken from the letters that I received from them. From an assistant DA, I promised myself to use my education to help those who needed someone to fight for them and echo their feelings out loud in court. From another assistant DA, I had to put a 14-year-old on the stand in a domestic violence case. During his testimony, his lip quivered the entire time, but he was brilliant. At the end of the trial, he came up and hugged me. He wrapped his arms around me for a couple minutes. Then he whispered to me, "Thank you for keeping my mom and me safe." From another assistant DA, one of the proudest days of my legal career was the day that I had the privilege to stand before the court and introduce myself as an assistant district attorney for Essex County. From another, for me, being an assistant DA is not a job, it's a calling, and I sincerely believe in the good we are doing in this office. From another assistant DA, I am dedicated to public service and public safety, fairness and justice, and I take great pride in conducting myself with a high degree of integrity and having an impact on the communities we serve. One assistant DA wrote about keeping a quote nearby as a guide from a Supreme Court Justice, Justice Jackson. The quote says, "The citizen's safety lies in the prosecutor who tempers zeal with kindness, who seeks truth, not victims, who serves the law and not factional purposes, and who approaches his task with humility." From an assistant DA from Lawrence, who talked about going to school in Lawrence and then going back there for a career service day, participating on a panel with Judge Rooney. At the end, some female students came over to them and talked about how inspired they were in taking an interest in the law. From a victim witness advocate, I aided a victim through a tough trial. The victim taught me how important our work was. She said she stayed the course because of our work. I take no credit. It was a privilege to remind her of what she was capable of. From another victim witness advocate, we are a source of emotional support, a liaison to the assistant DAs, and an educator of the court system. And this, from an assistant DA, I read this quote several times as it resonated very deeply with me. I believe that outcomes for victims of violent crime are far less related to a jury's verdict than they are in the ways in which the system in general and the employees of the DA's office in particular meet them where they are and treat them and their experience with dignity, empathy, and respect. As prosecutors, we are unable to undo the harm and trauma that has been inflicted upon them, but we can hold the offender accountable, which is rewarding. And finally, this from an assistant DA. My goal is for this to be my last job. I feel that way for 3 reasons: the work, my colleagues, and the public service that is justice, helping victims and families, protecting our residents, and mentoring young prosecutors. Now, came this piece of advice from a staff member. The microwave on the left side of the kitchen is the better one. But I would avoid the elevator on the left side of the lobby. Maureen Leal always has Twizzlers on her desk for the taking. And lastly, make sure that you get a runny egg breakfast sandwich on a ciabatta roll from Rosadella's. It's life-changing, trust me. I thank each and every one of you for your words. It really gave me a chance to know who you are, what brought you to this great and noble profession, and it meant a great deal to me. So as we go forward from this time, I will keep the needs of the community, the protection of our residents, and the words of my new colleagues close at hand, because what we can do together can be life-changing. Trust me. Thank you.